So good evening, Damilare Atiwi, and we'll be discussing disclosure and apologizing to the injured patient. Um, so basically, we realized that uh, some errors are inevitable. Like they say that to err is human, and when it comes to professional capacity, we have to look into how best doctors, physicians, health care providers can issue apology without incurring liability or incurring reasonable liability in case it becomes a legal matter. So today we are going to be talking about this as it is becoming a very serious issue, even though it is not a recent matter in most jurisdictions of the world. So medical mistakes, like I said earlier, can happen despite the best effort of physicians or healthcare providers. So what should we do when we find ourselves in this situation? Because many clinical experts now believe that disclosing the blunder and issuing a medical apology is appropriate course of action. Now, it became very vital to specifically include medical in the apology because to give a random apology might mean admission of error and of liability, which has could have several legal implications. So they termed it medical apology instead of just apology to make sure that professionals in the health sector are properly guided when doing such. So according to the Institute of Medicine, medical errors kill more people in hospitals every year than even breast cancer or car accidents combined. Healthcare practitioners, like other professions, make errors. So they are not gods, and as far as they are humans, there's a level of accuracy or perfection that they might be able to uh, do or carry out. So since they are humans, they are still open to making mistakes that might lead to one injury or another on their patient. So like every other profession, healthcare providers are not exempted. So no matter how highly trained or hardworking they are still liable to make some certain errors, which of course it is not expected of healthcare providers. So according to some estimates, medical mistakes occur 5 to 80 times per 100,000 consultations, which are mostly often, um, diagnostic errors and, prescription errors. So having said that, realize that even the smart and the cautious ones might still end up making mistake. So, for example, uh, in this is a very clear example that exposes the fact that no practitioner, no physician is totally immune from making medical errors, and an elderly, so we consider this example and we talk about it at the end of this short presentation. So an elderly, somewhat confused and vision impaired woman comes in for an annual checkup. She's accompanied into the exam room by your medical assistant, assuming you are a doctor or a physician, who then goes off to get some fresh supplies. The patient then tries to leave the exam room, falling and breaking a hip in the process. That is totally not the fault of uh, the physician. However, it still falls short of what the standard of medical practice expected of a physician. So what do I mean? In the medical setting, a medical error refers to physical or psychological harm that could or should have been avoided by ordinary standards of process, care, or behavior. So this example therefore falls under the definition of medical error, which means that it could happen to even the best physicians in the world, as they must be able to foresee possible errors and are expected not to omit to safeguard such from happening. So let's go ahead with disclosure, considering some very important terminologies in this presentation. Disclosure versus empathy and apology. So what do they really mean? The American Medical Association Code of Ethics states that a physician is required to disclose a patient to a patient when a mistake is made, and that liability fears should not impede this disclosure. So the question that came to my mind was, should the same requirements uh, be encouraged in Nigeria or be put in place in Nigeria and other countries where such is not available? These are the things we would consider during the course of our discussion. So there are some of the things that that usually make doctors, physicians, healthcare practitioners not to actually disclose or want to apologize as expected normally in the normal daily life or in the profession. So if you check the table one, you will see them there. The fear of retribution from the patient, they are usually afraid of that. Fear of retribution from colleagues or peers, as there is a standard expected of every medical practitioner or healthcare provider. So they might be afraid that if they go ahead and disclose or apologize, they might be open to these issues. Also, fear of financial judgment, as you know that compensation might be requested from them, might be ordered by the court if such case is taken up by the patient. We also have fear of conducting the conversation purely. We've realized that over the years, physicians find it hard to have proper conversations that are less professional and more social with their patients. And so they're always really afraid to have relaxed, comfortable conversation with them, especially when issues like these occur. Fear of having to handle the patient's emotions as well. It's as physicians are not necessarily psychologists, they might find it hard to handle what comes next after they've disclosed uh, what occurred during the treatment. So believe that disclosure is unnecessary. Some physicians really feel that it is normal, as they naturally assume that they are capable, they are humans as well, and mistakes occur like every other human can make mistake. So they find it unnecessary to go ahead with disclosing the error. So we have to believe that disclosure is primarily a factual conversation and not complex interpersonal conversation. I believe that the outcome is not related to action on the part of the discloser. Sometimes they feel they don't have the responsibility to do so. So believe that the eventual outcome would have likely occurred without the error. Some physicians always justify their error and do everything within their capacity to deflect, just to show that they did not commit or the error never led to any issue, even when it is obvious it did. So going ahead, what's the difference between disclosure and empathy and apology? So we're talking about disclosure, we're simply saying that sharing an error without an admission of guilt. So disclosure is basically showing, revealing to the patient that an error occurred without personalizing it or claiming to have committed the error. Empathy, on the other hand, is the expressing of remorse without the acceptance of blame. So it basically means that the physician is showing emotion as such, but then never accepting the blame in the instance. And finally, an apology, on the other hand, includes an admission of guilt for an error that has been committed. It also includes a statement of regret, an explanation of how the error happened, and a promise to learn how such errors might not be might be avoided in the future. So, so why is it really important to apologize as a physician? So, if you look at the table 2, you would see the list of reasons, among others, why it is really important that physicians apologize. So, apology begins to restore the patient's dignity and self-respect. Apology reaffirms the patient's and doctor's mutual commitment to the rules and values of the relationship and rebuilds trust. Apology assures patients that they are not at fault. Apology assures patients that they're safe, and the caregiver recognizes the odds and is committed to taking every possible measure to prevent further injury. And finally, apology shows the physician's vulnerability, which helps restore the victim's self-respect. So without wasting much time, I believe we should go straight to the discussion. And I would like to assume that we have one or two submissions to make, um, and opinions as well to share in this topic. So when and how should physicians apologize? So it has been established that it is important that physicians apologize when obvious medical error has been committed at every point in time. And however, there's a problem with how and when um, such apology should be tendered, as nobody really knows what the reaction of the patient or their relative will be in such instance. Some believe that it is actually when the error occurs, that without wasting time, that the apology should be tendered. And most people believe that it should be done by the physician that administered the treatment and nobody else, while others have other opinions. And how should it be tendered? So we'll have to consider this first question first before moving on to the second question. So can we go straight to that now? Mr. Sam, are you there? Hello? Mr. Sam?
Hello, hello,
Yes, can you hear me?
hello. I can hear you.
Okay, so
Yeah,
did
I
you
can
get the
hear you.
question?
Yes, I get the question.
Okay, would like to, as a legal practitioner who is vast in this area, would like to get your expert opinion on disclosure and apology when error has been committed by a physician, specifically when, if at all, it should be disclosed and how it should be disclosed, or the apology should be issued
Okay.
shortly.
There are two questions there. Number one, when? When should we, or when can a physician apologize for the errors or mistakes he had made in the process of treating a patient? And number two is, how can this apology be tendered? Those are the two questions. So let me start from when. When errors are made, apology should be made immediately. Reason being that there are a lot of school of thought as to this. One, from the end that apologies helps in healing the victim, or rather the patient on whom the error is committed on. So when you apologize immediately, it's a kind of showing that you are reducing or a kind of healing the victim from the pain or what he's going through, or what had occurred to her or him, as the case may be. So I felt that's the first school of thought. Some people felt that, okay, the apology can be made subsequently when things are going down, when there are no much pressures around, and you let the patient know. So that's another school of thought. So when exactly, I think what we should do is to look at the situation look at the circumstances and the situation on ground. But I felt that apology should be made immediately the error is committed. The moment you discover that an error has been done or had been committed, you try and apologize and made it known to the person that I think it's because of what had happened, and I'm really very sorry. And then I'm going to do everything that this does not repeat itself again. And I think you should do this and do this in order to actually rectify the error that had happened. So I felt that the apology should come immediately you discover or you know that an error has happened as a physician, in order to boost the healing of the patient involved. Then, how should we make this apology? Sometimes it's quite difficult to enter into such conversation of assuming blame, particularly when when you apologize is an admission that you have actually done something wrong. And depending on the kind of patients you have on desk, if it is a very violent person who would also want to take actions for the errors you have done, you might be very scared on how to put things in order to apologize. But well, I think there are two things involved. If you know how to approach it, it's good to just meet the patient and explain things to him. But if you don't know how to make this thing, you can meet one of the senior doctor or any physicians around, explain things to the person with the knowledge or the experience of the person. The person can call the patient and make things right between you both. So I think those are just my opinions as to when and how should physician apologize. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that succinct and quite exploratory contribution. So, Mr. Arab, are you there? Would like to add anything to?
I'm here.
Yes, please go ahead.
I think I'm not sure I have anything to add. But let me see, when and how. Well, I feel once the doctor discovers their error, that's the exact time that the apology should be tendered. Then how? Okay. The apology shouldn't be prideful. It should be remorseful and showing that, basically remorseful. I feel it should be remorseful, and it should also be tactful. So the person may also need to study basically the way things are, the situation of things, and you should look for a very calm point, not when maybe tempers are inflamed and all of that. So when tempers have cooled, the person should tender the apology. And also, I think I agree with what Mr. Sampson said about calling a senior physician, because sometimes the person that made the error, it may be a bit risky for the person to be the one to make the apology in person to the people that maybe he may have offended or made some sort of error, because they may want to lash out at that particular person and they may want to be physical. So maybe when a senior person does it and they feel, okay, this is not the person that made the mistake, but he's apologizing on the person's behalf. When you now see that, okay, that they may be taking it calmly and all that, you can now invite the particular practitioner who made the error to now give the apology in person when you see that, okay, that there will be no physical confrontation and all of that. So that's what I have to say about it.
Thank you very much. Dr. Dewey just entered the room. I don't know whether he's available to contribute to the topic as as a clinician. Dr. Dewey, are you there? Yeah, I guess not. So shortly, I think we should go ahead with the second question. Mrs. Modupe, are you there? Do you have something to add to this particular question?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I appreciate those who have spoken earlier. Okay, but I don't know, the way everybody has been saying apology should be made immediately is making it sound like we are stepping on someone's toes. You know, when you step on someone's toe, probably as you're walking and then you just mistakenly step on someone's toes, then you apologize immediately. I'm so sorry, it wasn't intentional. But when I think of medical error and mistakes, it might just be me, but I'm thinking of something very big, something very huge, something that is scary. So my own opinion is, depending on the error that might have been committed, if it's as apologize immediately, okay? Probably in the process of rendering your services, you spoke to your patient, more something not so serious. But if it's a big thing, I don't think the apology should be made immediately. I would advise that, based on my own opinion, I would advise that the physician, should try to see if the errors can be rectified before you make disclosure of such errors. For example, probably in the process of surgery, so one thing led to another, the patient lost a lot of blood, something that could have been avoided, okay? I think that situation should be salvaged first before you start thinking of, as a mistake, let us apologize to this person, or what should we do to this person? So I think the level of error will matter a lot when you are determining when to apologize to a patient or to the relative of a patient. So how big the error is should actually be considered. I wouldn't support that every medical error or every mistake should be apologized for immediately. Then how the physician should apologize, I think I'll go with the opinion of every other person, depending on the level of practice of the physician. If a house officer has made a serious medical error, then he might not be in the best position to even tender the apology himself, even though he might be there, but he shouldn't be the best position to tender the apology. He could talk to a resident doctor, a consultant who will meet with the patient or the relative of the patient, try to present the matter, and then they will now be, just like a form of consolation that will make sure that the doctor that did this and did that will face disciplinary actions. Those things would calm the patient down. Then I think that's all about my own contribution. In summary, determine the level of error that has been committed before you know when to apologize. If the errors can be salvaged, if the situation can be rectified immediately, then I think that should be the first thing before you now start talking about apology or things like that. Thank you very much.